Hello and welcome to Mars Hill, the show that examines new ideas and the effects they have on our lives, as well as old ideas and the effects they are still having on our lives. Is America on her way to becoming a religious battlefield? Well, my guest on this program believes that not only is America on its way to becoming a religious battlefield, but lays the blame solely on born-again Christians, or rather at the feet, I guess I wouldn't be too out of line in saying this, at the feet of the pastor of one of the largest California denominations, Chuck Smith. His name is Jon Boag. And John, why don't you, let's get this saga started from the very beginning. How did this friction between you and Calvary Chapel begin?
Well, it started about 1985 when Jerry Falwell was very active in his moral majority and called for a nationwide picket of 7-Eleven for pornography, selling Playboy, Penthouse. What happened is that I was living in the Encinitas area at the time, and I had a friend of mine that had a 7-Eleven store. Well, they picketed his store, and I just happened to be walking by and got in the middle of it, and I saw what they were doing, trying to ban pornography. So I felt, and many others of us did too, that perhaps they were trying to make San Diego County or Southern California another South Carolina, North Carolina, where first goes the pornography, then goes the dancing, then goes the beer, and you have a dry county. So what happened was the following week after their picket, I organized a picket against this Calvary Chapel, which is a fundamentalist Christian church, and spread pamphlets all over the parking lot and on the windshields of people at the parking lot. Within 4 days after that picket, I had my truck bombed. So,
whoa, your truck was blown up?
Yes, it was, yes, and I reported it to the FBI.
Uh-huh.
Went down and said basically what I'm telling you here.
And they came down and investigated all this?
Oh, you would think they would, but they didn't investigate anything. You know, they told me that what you did is you went up and kicked the sacred cow, and we can't protect you. All we can say is stay away from the place. And I said, wait a minute, to the two agents there. I said, what you're saying is that Jerry Falwell and his little born-again groupies can go around and picket any place they want, but we can't in turn go back and picket the church, where this is the incubator for these ideas and pickets. He said, well, Mr. Boag, you certainly can do that, but we can't guarantee your safety. We figure you better go home and grow flowers or something else. You're dealing with dangerous activists, these fundamentalist activists, and there's been a ration of this violence going on right at that time. This was 1985.
Right, this was around the time when the first abortion clinic was blown up in Pensacola.
That was the Pensacola Christmas Eve abortion. Christmas Eve is significant in that it's a celebration to Jesus. Well, it got pretty bad. You know, I had my place of business, my partner and I had a place of business in Leucadia, which is next to Encinitas, and it was firebombed with $250,000 damage on Christmas Eve. So they were sending me a very strong message that, no, you can't picket the church.
You know, that just seems so unbelievable. I guess the average audience listening in on this, I mean, you know, they might think, oh, come on, maybe it's a business competitor or something like that. But it just boggles the mind to think that a religious group, what we would consider to be peaceful, loving, born-again Christians, would be bombing that. Don't you think this is the case of maybe a lone religious fanatic and not really the church as a whole?
Well, to prove that the church did it would be simply to create the mindset that does it. If you can understand the mindset behind a David Carish when it comes to the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas, or Jonestown. What we're talking about is not the people who go to church. We're talking about the Pharisees or the ministers or priests who have a vested interest in this. This is economics. That collection plate is very dear to them. As the FBI told me, you threatened their collection plate. It has nothing to do with God or anything else. It has to do with economics. So when you put it in that perspective, people would understand, well, yeah, economics is a driving force. You know, you did threaten their collection plate, and people will do anything for money, won't they?
But didn't you then go to the hierarchy of Calvary Chapel, basically, and at least try to work with them and talk with them about your truck bombing experience?
Oh, absolutely, because when this happens, well, they never returned my phone calls. They were calling me, Satan got into my heart, and I'd had this strange conversion, because at one time I claimed to be a born-again Christian. I attended Calvary Chapel. I was into that whole mindset. So for me to jump ship on them and then start giving out information, which is inside information, I became a real traitor, and they just blasted me for being satanic and whatever.
Okay, now you say inside information. What does that mean? What's inside?
Well, I would say that most people who attend church have no idea what the finances of that church are, have no idea what the minister, the assistant minister, and what kind of financial dealings are going on there, what kind of politics are being played out with the anti-abortion. They don't have a backstage pass, so to speak.
So then, if my understanding is correct, now you write these materials down on pamphlets, and you go out to Calvary Chapel, and you hand them out, I assume, on a public walkway, like a sidewalk or something like that, to people coming in?
No.
Is that what's happening here?
Basically what I do is I go on to the parking lot and put my pamphlets, which is constitutionally protected material. And it will say something about the Pharisees, and generally what you do is you want to hit them on their weak points. And I think the weakest point that these Pharisees or ministers have is called sacred prostitution. That's the collection plate. So I burn them on that, and I always call them Pharisees, and you know, you're practicing sacred prostitution by passing the collection plate. That burns them. So I put it right around the windshields and then leave and let the parishioners look at it and make up their own mind.
And they're not too happy about what you're leaving on their automobiles.
I don't think the parishioners are so unhappy about that. I think that the Pharisees, the ministers, are unhappy about it, sure. Because if you read what I'm putting on there and what I'm charging them with, perhaps those people would go to another church.
So when you first spoke out against them, you were claiming that your truck was blown up. But now, what's happening to you? Are you having any more acts of violence against you? What's happening?
Well, since my truck, I've had 4 death threats. I've had my place of business firebombed on Christmas Eve. I've had the district attorney's office after me on, I would say maybe 6, 7 counts over a period of years. Most of them have been dismissed, maybe even 10 counts, trying to keep me off church property. So it's been a real difficult thing. I find myself aligning with Martin Luther King when he went to jail for in the civil rights movement. I find myself aligning with Randall Terry. As much as he is on the other end of it, I now understand some of Randall Terry's treatment, because he feels what he's doing is right. He feels it's constitutionally protected material. I don't agree with him because I'm very pro-choice, but I certainly agree with his right to say that. And I think I also should have the right to say that. And for the district attorney, and bringing in the state of California, and I'm facing 3 years in prison for saying what I believe, for exercising my religious freedoms on a church parking lot.
3 years?
3 years.
Now, this has got to be more than just handing out pamphlets on a parking lot, though.
Well, what happened is a rather complicated things, as most things are. I had an article that broke on me in the Los Angeles Times, and it featured I have a television program called The Age of Logic and Reason, and it featured my television program and showed me picketing Calvary Chapel, and it was I thought it was a very balanced piece because I didn't like it and the other person didn't like it. You know, that's a good journalism when nobody likes the article, right? So there wasn't favoritism on either side. So, however, what happened was Reverend Ruggieri, who's the head of Calvary Chapel in Huntington Beach, is my point of picket at this point, read the article, decided to get a restraining order against me. The article came out on Monday. The same week, Wednesday, I received a restraining order from Reverend Ruggieri, head of Huntington Beach Calvary Chapel, stating that I can't go near him, I can't go near his wife and his children. I don't even know who his wife and children are. I've never even seen them. But the basis of it was that I had to stay 100 yards away from them and off the church parking lot. So what he was saying is this was a cover story. In other words, if I can make Mr. Boag out to be somebody who's tailing my wife and causing great emotional stress on my family, I can slide in the fact that he has to stay off my parking lot also, because if I can get him 100 yards away from my wife, I can bring my wife into church and keep him off the parking lot.
Oh, kind of like using your wife and children as a shield.
Right, exactly, shield. It's a cover story. But what it boiled down to, and after three court cases involving this, what it boiled down to is they made a play to keep me off the church parking lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, before we talk about whether or not they succeeded in this, I want to talk a little bit about some of the arguments that went on in this trial. Of course, you stood on the ground of the First Amendment. What were some of the arguments that Calvary Chapel's lawyer used against you?
Well, the plaintiff in this particular case, the attorney for the plaintiff, took the stand of private property. These are private property rights, therefore he's trespassing, we can have him arrested. Whereas myself as a defendant, I argued constitutionality. And I prevailed on that issue based not solely on I'm a great attorney or anything. I prevailed on that issue from constitutional aspect that free religious speech is guaranteed in the First Amendment, and it's the first 16 words of the First Amendment. We either have the right to religious free speech or we do not have it. In the particular case, Commissioner Eleanor Park agreed with me and allowed me to distribute leaflets on the parking lot and even enter the church.
Well, on that note, you may be interested to know that I did attend this trial and got to see some of the arguing and the bickering that went on in the courtroom. And I've got some videotape of that I would like to show you at this moment. So let's take a brief pause, sit back, relax, and let's join Jon Boag at the Santa Ana courtroom.